You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Whistleblowers. Whistleblowers. Tattletales. They will help enforce snitches. Whistleblowers, tattletales, snitches. They will help enforce Biden's COVID vaccine mandate for businesses. Remember back in September, information was given by current administration indicating any employer with employees over 100, all their employees are going to have to be vaccinated, or they're going to have to do weekly testing. Not sure who's going to pay for that. Yeah, there's going to be some exemptions for religious and medical, but for the most part, over 100 employees, you're all going to have to be vaccinated, or maybe lose your job if you're not willing to comply with all these things. And if you look at the number of inspectors that are out there, roughly 1,850, and there's like 150 million employees, those numbers aren't good. And so initially when this came out, I'm like, who's going to enforce all of this? How are they going to do that? Whistleblowers, tattletales, narcs, snitches. They're going to help enforce. That's just where we're at with this thing, right? I mean, so it's basically you're on the honor system here. Remember, this vaccine mandate has not it's not in place. It's not enforceable. It's not even a thing yet. The second stay by the court system, a circuit court, happened. I'm reading this to you on November the 15th, happened last Friday, the second stay. Second set of judges basically just said, yeah, no, this is a no-go. The emergency temporary deal from OSHA, it is too broad. It covers everybody. And you know what? We don't really even think it's constitutional. But let's just say this whole bad boy gets enacted. All right. Yep, you got over 100 employees, got everybody lined up and get the jab, or they've all got to show proof that they've been jabbed. Otherwise, you can't have them working for you. Let's just say that goes through. This is literally, today's podcast is literally how they're going to enforce it. The Biden administration has said it will rely on whistleblowers to help enforce its COVID-19 vaccine mandate by ratting out businesses that fail to comply because the federal government doesn't have enough safety inspectors to do it. When you are relying on whistleblowers or rats to do your work, I am not okay with that. I am not okay with that. The administration is betting that informants will be so outraged by their employer. Really? Let me read that again. The administration is betting that informants will be so outraged by their employer violating the mandate or not requiring weekly COVID-19 tests for their coworkers that they will turn them in. Well, I don't think we're going to have to even see if this happens because this mandate isn't going to go through. That's my prediction. I don't think it will. I think it's going to be tied up in court. And by the time they actually get it through, if they ever did, whatever it turns out that it actually is, pandemic will look wildly different, and this may not even really be all that relevant. But let's just say it does. Do you really? If you're working for a company that, your coworker, you're just like, oh, geez, are they vaccinated? I am not sure. I don't know, but I see them as a big threat. Hey, you're not getting your testing? Oh my word, you're not getting tested? I need to blow on that whistle right now, loud and hard. That's just, to me, this doesn't make any sense. And yet, in some world, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? We're going to rely on whistleblowers. I always kind of grew up with something along the lines of, and this might be a little harsh, this might not be, the best of theories, but snitches get stitches. So throwing stitches in there with whistleblowers and all that stuff, yeah, that's kind of where I come from here. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration has said that there are not enough workplace safety inspectors to ensure that the millions of workers in the U.S. companies with 100 or more employees will be vaccinated or tested weekly by January 4th, when the controversial mandate is scheduled to take effect. There's no way that's going in place by January 4th. This thing's going to be litigated out forever. And it's going to rely upon snitches on the tail end when it does go into effect. All right. And so OSHA is going to be able to deal with the massive amount of complaints being dealt out. There is no army of OSHA inspectors that is going to be able to be knocking on employers' doors or even calling them. Debbie Berkowitz, a former OSHA chief of staff and fellow at Georgetown University's Kalmovitz Initiative for Labor. Oh my word, that's the longest name ever. I'm not reading anymore. I'm just not. I'm opting out of reading the rest of that name. So bottom line is there's not enough people to go around to be, haven't been vaxxed, haven't been testing, $14,000 fine on you. Shame on you. Shame. They're going to rely on workers and their union representatives to file complaints where the company is totally flouting the law, she said. Okay, this sounds like something that I really want to get in the middle of, right? Nutty. Acting OSHA Administrator Jim Frederick recently told reporters that his agency will focus on job sites where workers need assistance to have a safe and healthy workplace. What does that even mean? How many workplaces are you going to get to? Because the ratio I came up with, what did I do with my phone? What's the rate? It's like 70,000 workers per investigator. That's the size of some medium-sized cities, right? Not tiny cities, decent-sized cities. So you've got one OSHA investigator to go around per employee for like 70,000. How many during the pandemic do you think they're really going to get to while this thing is in order, if it ever even gets to that stage, right? So this whole thing typically comes through in the form of a complaint, he said. It's unknown how many people will snitch on their own employer despite risks to themselves and possible loss of job security. And critics point out that OSHA has rarely provided protection when they do come forward. This kind of goes to that whole notion of snitches get stitches. It just does. A company could face a fine of up to nearly $14,000 for serious violations. You got a serious violation? No, it's pretty comical. It's not serious. It's comical. Blowing the whistle on an employer can have dire consequences. Technically, the law says that companies can't retaliate against a worker for raising a health and safety issue or filing an OSHA complaint or even reporting an injury. But retaliation is rampant, Berkowitz said. Yeah, right? That's where this whole thing is just kind of set up with this crazy house of cards. And you're like, all right, from the get-go, we know that it's a workaround. We've had government officials basically retweet that this is a workaround because it's the fastest way that they can get a mandate in place. It may not be constitutional. It's certainly not enforceable from a practical standpoint. Why are we going through this again? I'm unclear on that. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I'm going to have to do some more research. And I joke about that, but if you are new in your job or if you are new at life in something where you are supposed to have a certain level of knowledge and acumen at whatever task it is, whatever job you're doing, and you don't know what in the F you're doing, what I recommend to people, and this is like a Sean life lesson if there is something along those, I wouldn't place a lot of weight in it, but it is not uncommon. And I tell my younger brokers this, and I'm trying to go through some of the things I teach my younger brokers. It's okay to say, I don't have the answer. I'm going to have to get back to you on this because I want to give you the best answer I can. And right now, I need to reach out to somebody who's got a little bit more experience on this particular topic. I understand about half of this topic, but in order to get you an answer that you're totally comfortable with and that I'm totally comfortable giving you, I need to reach out to somebody with a little bit more experience on this specific question that we've got in front of us. That is totally okay to do. It just is, no matter how old you are. Because I come up with stuff like this all the time. It's like, I don't really know what the answer to that is. So many weird, random things come up in life, especially with all the tech issues that are out there. Just crazy stuff. Whistleblowers, fact checkers who don't really know how to check facts. I mean, it's just snitches are out there just lurking under the corners of everywhere. Yeah, crazy time. But no, I jest about, I'm going to have to get back to you. But oftentimes that is something I'll use and they're like, hey man, I don't know. And I'm at a point now where I'm old enough where I'm just like, if people know that I don't know something, I don't really care. Because it's kind of like, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. There's a lot of specifics on owning the 3 companies that I own that I should know, that I don't, because I can only fit so much in my head at one given point in time. And I try and pack as much in there as I can. A lot of it's just useless, ridiculous information because I like to talk about it on the podcast. So that means some other really important stuff doesn't quite get there. Sorry about that, folks. But I give you the best I can. So there are times where you're like, yeah, instead of reading that news story about that rock star who urinated on stage on top of her fan, I should have been doing more about the due diligence on some other paperwork or, something along those lines. But no, I was reading about the rock star because that's outrageous. Oh, that is. Going to the bathroom on a stage, that's a real deal, by the way. Happened this weekend. All right. So President Biden in September announced his intent to put a vaccine mandate in place as the Delta variant caused an uptick of coronaviruses in the U.S., saying the variant was fueling a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Do you remember when we heard that? All right. But being that people who have been vaccinated can also get coronavirus, it's not just a pandemic of the unvaccinated, is it? No. But we don't want to talk about that too much because then I might get, can't really go down those rabbit holes anymore. The mandate will cover 84 million workers because this is companies only over 100 employees. Remember that. So next step, if this were to go through, which I don't think there's any chance it will, if this were to go through, then we throw the net out for companies underneath 100 employees. And the reason they went after companies over 100 employees is because they figured, well, they've got the resources to kind of make this happen. And they're going to have whistleblowers galore, snitches just doing their thing. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 750,000 Americans have died because of the coronavirus. All right. Biden's directive has been challenged by a number of Republican-led states. And last Saturday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana issued a stay, and we've had 2 stays, right, citing grave statutory and constitutional concerns about the mandate. Yeah, when you've got judges saying, I don't know about the constitutionality of that bad boy, no matter what location they're in, you're kind of like, whether they're, Republican or Democrat or moderate or whatever it is, you're kind of like, okay, is this even going through? The White House is battling the decision in court, but in the meantime, it has asked businesses to adopt their own mandates. Just go ahead and do a little workaround. Just scooch around the fact that this isn't even in play yet and do what you know is right and make sure all of your employees get vaccinated. That is literally what the current administration has told businesses. You know that this is the right thing to do, so you need to implement this sooner than later. Let's get going. We think people should not wait, what the current administration is saying. We say, do not wait to take actions that will keep your workplace safe. It's important and critical to do them, and waiting to get more people vaccinated will lead to more outbreaks and sickness. Here in the state of Washington, here in Seattle and King County, we got a really high vax rate. It just is. So how much more do we need here? Just wondering, are there any snitches out there that are willing to share with me what that information looks like? I don't know. OSHA, which oversees workplace safety in 29 states, would be tasked with enforcing the mandate, with around 1,850 inspectors responsible for 130 million workers. Let me read that back to you again. With around 1,850 inspectors responsible for 130 million workers total, the agency would be pressed thin, forcing it to enlist an army of whistleblowers. Pressed thin? I mean, if by pressed thin you mean one enforcement agent for every 70,000 roughly individuals, do you know how many people or 70,000 are? So like fill up a big stadium, fill up a good sized stadium, more than 50, slightly less than 100. So take that last ring around the top. Don't fill that up with people. You've probably got 70,000. So that one person walking into that enormous dome, looking around going, good Lord, that's a lot of people. And they're right. They're responsible for enforcing that entire stadium, all those people that are working for companies. That's their responsibility. It's never going to happen. Ludicrous. So that's why it's falling to the responsibility of whistleblowers. When you have to rely on whistleblowers in the honor system, doesn't that kind of tell you where it's going? I mean, how that's happening. The majority of businesses are expected to follow the mandate as they do with other OSHA regulations. They might follow it because they want to follow it. Other businesses, I think, are just saying, we're going to wait and see because this isn't even a mandate yet. And this thing's tied up in court. So this doesn't really even matter for right now. But we're being told you want to get out ahead of the game. You want to get in front of this. You want to scooch out in front. You want to be in front, not behind. Oh, you get behind. Most employers, they're law-abiding. David Michaels, a former OSHA chief. Well, if that's the case, yeah, I'm the whole thing. Not even going to go there. A former OSHA chief who is an epidemiologist and professor of public health at George Washington University told the AP, most employers, they're law-abiding. So for the most part, we're just going to trust everybody. Going to put this mandate in place, trust everybody, and, we're just going to rely on whistleblowers to take care of what we can't. Because we can't really take care of hardly anything given the number of inspectors we have. They're trying to make sure that they meet the requirements of every law and regulation. Now OSHA will follow up. They'll respond to complaints. They'll do spot checks. Now, OSHA was busy before all of this nonsense. Now we've got this stuff coming through, and it's not like they were just, you know what? We were waiting for a pandemic to come along, and then we're going to just go enforce all the new regulations from the pandemic. These are not, this is not a new enforcement here. The OSHA is there to handle existing safety issues for employers and employees, right? So they'll do spot checks. They'll issue citations and fines, and they'll make a big deal of those to discourage other potential violators. So I've spent a lot of time. I've spent numerous podcasts kind of covering these vaccine mandates. And why is it so important? It's important because employment during the pandemic, we're open, we're closed, you're essential, you're not essential. Understanding how this stuff moves forward, I think is it's kind of critical getting out to the other end, whatever that other end might look like. Post-COVID, post-pandemic, whatever it is. But in the meantime, we've got these mandates coming down that I kind of look at and go, good luck getting that enforced. Good luck, number one, getting that implemented. Just basically good luck there. This doesn't feel like this is going to go through. And yet you've got media story after media story after media story. You've got politicians saying, well, you need to because, we've got this mandate coming, and by January 4th, employers and employees, they need to realize that this is going to be the new norm. And if you follow this story, you're kind of like, hold on. Hey now, cowboy, let's put a little stoppage in there because we're not totally on board with this yet. Court system isn't. Circuit courts aren't. 2 of them. They put a little stay. They just tap the brakes in the process here. So we're just going to have to see how this goes. But I don't think it's probably going anywhere. And if it does, it's not really enforceable from a practical standpoint. They're, in fact, relying upon whistleblowers to enforce this. The whole thing to me is just crazy. What are we doing here? Well, we're just trying to force people to get the jab so that they can keep their job. And, it's based on a medical decision that some would say should be made by the individual, not by the whistleblower, not by the employer, not by a governmental entity, but by the individual. But that seems to be a very, very, opinion that is not perceived to be prominent in today's society, does it? No. There's a strong sector of folks who are like, yeah, I don't think so. That's why we're covering it here, because it's an important part of the employment sector. And never mind, I haven't even touched, the last few podcasts, I haven't even touched on the fact that we've got this whole, labor supply issue. Don't have enough people to put in jobs where jobs are basically screaming out, we need a body. We need a body to fill this position to get this job done so that we can have the economy kind of go back to where it was, get things more on a more smooth basis. Once we get the whole supply chain thing ironed out, all these things have to do with each other because we're all going, the economy's just roaring along, pandemic, hiccup. And then, all right, we're going again, and you've got the supply chain, you've got the labor supply issue. If you have these mandates come down and employers literally are like, we need more employees. We can't afford to fire any. What are we going to do? This is not the time to be having these mandates come down, but it is. And so that's why we're covering here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. It's an ongoing effort to, all right, here's where you're at. This is what's going on. And I think people need to know that. So that's why I've covered this topic as much as I have, because I think on a daily basis, this is one of those things. It's like, all right, this may not really impact us. Maybe I don't work at a company with 100 employees. But if it does go through, guaranteed, they're going to start looking at employers with less than 100. And they're casting a net to cover everybody at that point in time. So that's why I've covered this, and that's why I think this is a topic that on a real estate podcast is super important, because that whole having a job to make those payments on your house, those two things kind of go hand in hand. Just like this mandate and whistleblowers go hand in hand. So when you're relying upon whistleblowers to enact your little dealio, okay. I'm just going to let that ride and see what happens, because we're reasonable here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for staying tuned. I will keep you posted when the next legal issue on said vaccine mandate rears its ugly head. All right. Thanks again for being here. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Until then, stay safe. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.